Hi, in this video, I will go through the social welfare laws. So these two pink triangles in a tariff diagram. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to use letters because in the exam, you won't have colors. And as there's going to be lots of different areas to refer to, it's going to get ambiguous if you just shade things in. So I prefer to use the letter method. Give me a couple of seconds. Okay, so this diagram looks a little busier, maybe a little bit scarier. I hope that's okay for now. Anyway, so social welfare is the welfare of everybody in society. So social means, society. That's usually just consumers and producers, but there could be third parties involved. There could be governments involved. So be sure to include those in case you have to work out social welfare for when there's many different groups in a particular situation. Okay, so to look at the social welfare laws, what I'm going to do, I'm going to calculate the original social welfare, and we're going to compare it to the social welfare afterwards, after the tariff. Okay, so who do we have in society? We have the consumers, so these will have a certain welfare. We have producers, but after we have the tariff, we also have governments because the government is going to be receiving tax revenue or revenue from the tariff. Okay, one valid way to work out social welfare is to add up the surplus. So add up the consumer surplus, add up the producer surplus. This is like a good estimate of social welfare. So social welfare can be some of your consumer surplus and your producer surplus. All right, so let's break this down. So I like to think of consumer surplus as three things. You miss any one of these things and things can go wrong. So it's a difference between the price that they're willing and able to pay. That's shown by the demand curve. And the price that they actually pay, which isn't necessarily the price that the firm is receiving, it's just the price that the consumer pays for all the units that they buy. So the quantity of units that the consumers are purchasing. Okay, so the price that they are willing to pay is shown by the demand curve. So they're willing to pay all of these different prices for all of these different quantities. The price that they do pay, we're looking at the original case without the tariff, is going to be P1. So I'm just going to say, highlight this in orange, saying that's the price that they are paying, P1. And they are able to buy Q4 units. Remember that they're able to buy some from the domestic producers, but some as imports. And overall, they want to buy Q4, and the world can produce kind of like these sort of infinite quantities for them. So basically, they're able to buy Q4. So that gives us the total consumer surplus as A, B, C, D, E, and F. So all of this kind of triangle area there is the consumer surplus originally. So I'm just going to write that down. A, B, C, D, E, and F. Right. What happens to consumer surplus after the tariff? The price is no longer P1, it's now P2. They're still willing and able to pay on this demand curve. But now there's a reduction in the quantity that the consumers are able to purchase. They only ever purchase Q3 now. So you have the difference between the price, the demand curve, and that's your consumer surplus afterwards. So just area A and area B. I'm going to get rid of the annotation. It's going to get really messy with everything that we're going to go through. So that's area A and B. Producer surplus is very similar. There's also 3 steps. So it's the difference between the price that they sell okay, debatable, but let's go with that. The price that they are selling for and the price that they are willing to sell at. That's shown by the supply curve of the producers and the quantity that they sell. Now, In this particular diagram, when we're talking about the social welfare of a country, we're talking about the producers in that country. So we are talking about domestic producers. In other words, don't worry too much about the world supply. Here, we're just thinking about I want to get rid of some of these lines. Yes, maybe as far as I'm going to go. We're looking at this supply curve. This is representing what the UK or the domestic suppliers are willing and able to sell. And originally, they are just selling at price P1. So they only get a producer surplus of just G. But now with the tariff, the price goes up to P2. So they're able to get a larger difference. And they get to keep all this price. It's not taken away as a tax, because only the imports are taxed, not the domestic production. So the domestic producer surplus before was just G, and the domestic producer surplus afterwards is G and C, or C and G. Originally, we only had consumers and producers in this domestic country. So overall, the total social welfare was A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Afterwards, though, we have the issue that the government is now coming into play. The government is generating a surplus for themselves because they are charging a tax on all of the imports. So the government surplus is going to equal the amount of tax that they charge on all the quantity of imports into the country. Okay, so this is only something that happens with the tariff, obviously. And the imports with the tariff, I don't want to talk too much about that, but it's going to be the difference between Q3 and Q2. And the tax is just the distance between WS1 and WS2. Again, we need to, if you have questions about that, let me know, and it's not answered by another video, let me know. So the difference between Q3 and Q4, Q2, this is how much money the government is generating by taxing the imports. So you can see the perils of using colors. The government is generating area E in tax revenue. E is of height T, and is of length the quantity of the imports. So that's the government surplus. I'm just going to say this is area E. Government surplus equals E. Okay, putting this all together, the social welfare after a tariff is now A and B from the consumers, C and G from the producers, and then E that the government is retaining. So you have A, B, C, E, and G. That's your social welfare after the tariff. Overall then, what's the effect of the tariff? So we started at social welfare of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And now we are ending up at A, B, C, E, and G. So the change in the social welfare with adding this tariff for the domestic firm overall, taking into account everyone, the consumers, the producers, as well as the government, is that they have lost out on D and they have lost F. So that is those two triangles that I showed you at the beginning of this video. In pink, I think I showed you, these are those welfare loss triangles, D and F. That's the argument that the tariff is overall going to be harmful to a country that imposes the tariffs. The reason is because if you look at kind of what's going on here in detail, essentially like the decline in consumer surplus is much larger than the increase in producer surplus and government tax revenue. So some people would say it's not worth adding a tariff because overall you are harming consumers a lot more than the benefit that you get to the producers and to the government. Of course, that's just looking at it from a static point of view. And that's the theory. So let me know if you have any more questions about welfare losses with tariffs. I will also do a video similar to this with quotas, if that's helpful to you. Or if you have any other questions, leave a comment and I'll be happy to take a look at that. Thank you very much.